What if I told you that something happened behind closed doors that the league never wanted you to see? Something so damaging, so controversial, that entire teams of lawyers, publicists, and executives worked overtime just to keep it buried. And yet, somehow, pieces of the truth started leaking out. Fans began asking questions. Reporters started digging. And what they found was more shocking than anyone expected. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this incident sent shockwaves through the entire basketball world, and why the league fought so hard to make sure it never saw the light of day. Welcome back to HoopNexis, the channel where we dig deeper than anyone else into the stories the mainstream media won't touch. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we bring you the real stories behind the game you love, the stuff happening off the court that shapes everything you see on it. Today we're diving into an incident that many believe was deliberately covered up, one that raises serious questions about transparency, accountability, and just how much control the league actually has over the narrative you're allowed to hear. Let's set the scene. For years, the league has cultivated a carefully polished image. Everything from the uniforms to the pre-game interviews to the halftime shows is designed to present a certain picture to the public, a picture of unity, professionalism, and clean competition. But behind that polished surface, there have always been whispers. Whispers about disputes between players and front offices. Whispers about financial arrangements that don't add up. Whispers about decisions made not for the good of the game, but for the good of a select few people sitting in boardrooms far away from the arena lights. This particular incident started quietly. There was no press conference, no official statement, nothing that would have tipped off the average fan that anything unusual was happening. Instead, it began with small inconsistencies. A player who suddenly stopped speaking to reporters. A coaching change that made no logical sense given the team's performance. A scheduling decision that seemed to benefit one franchise over another in a way that raised eyebrows among longtime analysts. Individually, these things might have seemed unrelated. But when people started connecting the dots, a much bigger and much more troubling picture began to emerge. Sources close to the situation, speaking only on condition of anonymity, suggested that internal disagreements had reached a boiling point. According to these accounts, there were serious concerns being raised about how certain decisions were being made at the highest levels, decisions that potentially affected the integrity of competition itself. Now, to be clear, nothing here should be taken as confirmed fact, because that's exactly the problem. The league has been remarkably effective at controlling information, and that control is precisely what makes this story so compelling. As word started to spread among insiders, the reaction from the league office was swift. Statements were carefully worded. Interviews were tightly managed. Certain journalists who had been asking pointed questions suddenly found their access restricted. This is where things start to get interesting, because when an organization goes out of its way to limit the flow of information, it often signals that there's something worth hiding. Fans on social media picked up on this shift almost immediately. Threads began popping up asking why certain reporters had gone quiet. Why certain players seemed noticeably guarded when the topic came up. Why the usual chatter and banter that fills post-game interviews had been replaced with short, scripted, almost robotic responses. The pressure continued to build. As more people started asking questions, the league found itself in a difficult position. On one hand, silence only fueled more speculation. On the other hand, addressing the situation directly risked confirming that something had actually gone wrong. So instead, what we saw was a strategy of distraction. Suddenly, there were big trade rumors dominating headlines. Major storylines involving unrelated players started trending. It almost felt too convenient, as if attention was being deliberately redirected away from the real story unfolding behind the scenes. But here's the thing about the internet age: you can manage a narrative for a while, but you can't control it forever. Eventually, small leaks started to surface. A former staff member spoke briefly and anonymously to an independent outlet, hinting that internal documents existed detailing exactly what had transpired. Screenshots began circulating, though their authenticity was immediately disputed by official league representatives. Fans who had been following the story from the beginning felt a mixture of vindication and frustration. Vindication because their instincts had been right all along, and frustration because it was clear the full truth was still being kept just out of reach. What makes this incident particularly troubling is not just what may have happened, but the lengths to which it appears efforts were made to prevent the public from ever finding out. In a league that generates billions of dollars in revenue, where the trust of fans is the foundation upon which everything is built, transparency should be the standard, not the exception. When information is tightly controlled and inconvenient questions are met with silence or deflection, it naturally erodes that trust, whether or not there was ever any real wrongdoing to begin with. It's worth stepping back here and asking a bigger question. Why does this keep happening? Why do major sports organizations so often default to secrecy rather than openness when controversy arises? Part of the answer likely comes down to the massive financial stakes involved. Sponsorships, broadcast deals, and franchise valuations are all tied directly to public perception. Any hint of scandal, even one that turns out to be relatively minor, can send shockwaves through those financial relationships. So from a business standpoint, controlling the narrative isn't just about protecting reputations, it's about protecting enormous sums of money. But fans deserve better than carefully managed half-truths. The people who buy the tickets, wear the jerseys, and tune in night after night are the reason these leagues exist in the first place. When incidents like this one are buried or minimized, it sends a message that the business side of the game matters more than the people who actually support it. And that's a message that resonates deeply with anyone who has ever felt like they were being kept in the dark about something that mattered to them. As of now, the full story still hasn't been officially confirmed or denied in any comprehensive way. Pieces continue to surface here and there, but the complete picture remains frustratingly incomplete. What we do know is that enough credible voices have raised enough serious concerns that this isn't something that should simply be dismissed or forgotten. It deserves scrutiny, it deserves follow-up, and most importantly, it deserves transparency from the people who have the power to provide it. So what do you think really happened here? Do you believe there was a genuine cover-up? Or do you think this is simply a case of normal internal disagreements being blown out of proportion by speculation and rumor? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below, because we want to hear your take on this. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more stories like this one, stories that go beyond the highlight reels and dig into what's really happening behind the scenes, make sure you subscribe to HoopNexis and turn on that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We'll keep digging until we find the answers the league doesn't want you to have. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one, right here on HoopNexis.